if it takes $20 billion of semiconductors and electricity to create something unique, that's more scarce and that's harder to attack, right? That's more secure and that's more tangible than if I take a simple computer in my basement and I simulate all that stuff in a computer program. That's just a computer program. So a lot of times people, they get that wrong. And once you acknowledge that you need energy to create something real in the real world, then you just compare Bitcoin to the right thing, which is you have to compare it to planes and trains and automobiles and medicine and retail and defense and the rest. And now you come to a very simple conclusion, which is Bitcoin is the cleanest, most efficient, most valuable use of energy in the world. Full stop, right? That's the big idea. You're putting electricity into a data center and the product is digital energy. There is no cleaner product coming out of a data center than digital energy. It is immortal, indestructible energy. Right? That's a cleaner product than a Netflix streaming video. It's a cleaner product than iPhones and iPads. It's a cleaner product than I put the energy into a laundromat or into a natural gas facility or into a plastics refinery, or I put the energy into a hospital or a school or a building. All of those things are dirtier applications of energy than a Bitcoin mining center. So once you get that idea, it's actually not energy intensive. It's actually energy efficient. Tube network that's worth $800 billion. There is no example of anything in the world that you can put $2 billion of electricity into and get an $800 billion market cap out of, other than Bitcoin. So that's a big misnomer. People don't understand digital energy. They don't understand digital capital. They don't understand digital property. They don't realize that ethically and technically, you can't succeed without putting energy into it.
So money is very simply a tool for moving value across time and space. And money emerges naturally in any trading society. Very simply, it's just the most tradable thing. And this is something that arises on the free market. It's not something contrary to modern belief that actually government imposes. And another way to think about money is as insurance against uncertainty. So clearly the future is inherently uncertain. You never know what's going to happen. But because money can be used to buy anything in the marketplace, it gives users pure optionality so that they can go into uncertain conditions in the most beneficial way to them. They can deal with uncertainty the best. So in that case, you'll see people in economic crisis tend to hoard gold or hold cash as the demand for that insurance policy grows amid uncertain conditions.
Personally, I still feel like I'm so early to Bitcoin. It blows my mind. Not only is the Bitcoin market cap at under $500 billion right now, but furthermore, if you go out in public and you talk to people about Bitcoin, usually their first impression is Bitcoin, what is Bitcoin? That's a scam, or Bitcoin's not real anything. What are you talking about? So just look around you guys, go talk to people in the streets and try to get them to talk about Bitcoin, and they're gonna look at you crazy. And if this isn't a sign of us being early to Bitcoin, I don't know what else is, because as far as we all know, Bitcoin is the best way to store your value, to save your wealth, to make sure that your wealth isn't debased by fiat currencies. Even furthermore, people don't even know what fiat means. Is this not more proof that we are early to this stuff, guys? Bitcoin's at 20K or whatever, and it's guys, zoom out. We are so early.
9% inflation is bad. How about 2 million %? From 1919 to 23, the Weimar Republic became the poster child for hyperinflation. After World War I, Germany was saddled with insurmountable debt from war reparations. As they began defaulting on that debt, foreign troops seized industrial goods from coal mines, railways, and factories, crippling Germany's economy. In response, the government began a printing spree of unbacked money to achieve stability, inevitably leading to, well, the opposite of that. Bread went from 250 marks to 200 million marks in the span of 1 year. This economic economic upheaval made its way into Germany's political system, where immense dissatisfaction in major political parties paved an opportunity for Hitler's new fringe Nazi party to take power by 1933. Many present countries have followed a similar path, creating money out of thin air to devalue past debt and stabilize the economy. The question is, will they eventually bear similar consequences, or is this time different?
But the thing is this, Bitcoin is opportunity, right? When right, full disclosure, I'm 43 and I discovered Bitcoin in 2017, and I was working full-time as a human rights activist and involved in politics. And I was so frustrated. That was so frustrated, because that's the fiat word and it does not work, period. No way you're going to make it work. And when I finally found Bitcoin, I realized that it's such a powerful tool. And now, after 7 years, I'm full-time on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is an opportunity, not for you, Mickey, not for me, not for Ben, not for you, Nozomi, for everyone out there. So you should all get inspired by all the possible stories and think about what Bitcoin still have to tell and what Bitcoin still has to do. It's going to be awesome. This is just the beginning, guys. It's so early. Bitcoin is a wake-up call to the world.
It's like in Italy 10 years ago, no one spoke English, for example. So if you were able to do your job well and you spoke English, you had much more opportunity than your friends. This is what I think is happening in Bitcoin now. A lot of people think that orange peeling means making your friends buying Bitcoin or teaching them about the hash rate and proof of work and the Merkle tree or like Taproot. I think orange peeling to me is teaching my graphic designer friends, web designer friends, communicator, marketing, any kind of job that you can do digitally within internet, just making them accepting Bitcoin or working in the Bitcoin ecosystem, because there are a lot of opportunity now there, because it is the future, is the technology of the future. But it's not that you have to know everything about Bitcoin itself. Meanwhile, you can just be a graphic designer accepting Bitcoin in your website and starting working from a lot of people all around the world and getting paid super fast, super easily from whoever. Of course.
For me, the most interesting thing is not what Bitcoin can do for Western developed countries, because we have fairly sophisticated banking systems. I am fascinated by the idea of being able to deploy Bitcoin on a Nokia feature phone in Kenya, in Lagos, Nigeria, and bringing online to a global economy people who have never had access to financial services with international credit, and who could now be connected to everyone else in the world on an equal footing. That is very exciting to me, and I think that's where the greatest need lies that Bitcoin can fulfill.
Okay.
There are a lot of Bitcoiners who have come to what I think is a realization that at this point, I think the evidence is in that non-Bitcoin cryptos are actually a strong net negative, that there aren't innovations happening in altcoins really that are going to be useful for Bitcoin or wouldn't come up with research around Bitcoin. Again, if you took all of that investment and put it toward research on Bitcoin, that's what you're not seeing. Just like a government taxing the village to build a bridge. You can see the bridge. Okay, sure, I can see you've got these shitcoins. Great, whatever you got. Aave sort of working, but the only things on it are unregistered securities that can never exist in the future. Like, you didn't actually do anything. But if you took all that money from all this DeFi investment, $40 billion of LP money for crypto equity in the last 2 years, and put a tenth of that, $4 billion toward building on Bitcoin, that would be like 150 to 200x all of the investment ever put into Bitcoin startups. We don't see that this crypto is a massive tax on human progress and freedom.
This is Matthew Cratter from Trade University, and today I want to talk about a cranky bankster who's been attacking Bitcoin. He's been attacking it for many years. He recently attacked Bitcoin at the Davos meeting. This is Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of JP Morgan, which is a large and corrupt US bank. And in this interview, which I will link to in the description notes below so you can listen to it yourself, it's only about 2 minutes long, Jamie Dimon says that Bitcoin itself is a hyped up fraud. Crypto is a decentralized Ponzi scheme. It's a pet rock. And I've been getting a lot of questions about this, especially his comment on how Satoshi could come back and increase the maximum supply to 21 million. So that's why I'm covering it in today's video. Now, JP Morgan and Jamie Dimon are definitely qualified to know about Ponzi schemes, especially because JP Morgan was one of the large banks that was helping Bernie Madoff run his multi-billion-dollar Ponzi scheme. I believe this was before Jamie Dimon was CEO, but definitely JP Morgan has this very corrupt history, and it has a more recent corrupt history helping out this guy with doing you-know-what, according to this lawsuit. So I'll link to that in the description notes below. JP Morgan since 2000 has paid over $36 billion in fines, just an unbelievable amount. This is the cost of doing business, of course, when you are a bankster, because they're still getting very rich. Jamie Dimon himself is a billionaire in spite of this. But I bring up this context just so you know where Jamie Dimon's coming from, where JP Morgan's coming from, and whether they have the moral high ground to call out other people and to call software protocols a Ponzi scheme. In the same interview, Jamie Dimon does the old Bitcoin bad, blockchain good spiel. And I just wanted to tell Jamie, 2017 called and wants its talking points back. I thought we had heard the last of this, but it looks like old guys like Jamie Dimon want to bring it back. He talks also about how JP Morgan has their own internal blockchain, which may or may not be shared with different banks. And I would answer, who really cares that JP Morgan or some other bank has an internal blockchain? Wouldn't a centralized database work better for whatever they're doing? If you have a blockchain, if you have an open ledger, a transparent blockchain, this is definitely not something that JP Morgan wants to share with the outside world. So it's an internal thing, and in most cases, centralized databases are a much more efficient use of computing power than blockchains. The only time you want a blockchain is when you want some sort of decentralization and you want some transparency, and JP Morgan is definitely not interested in giving up their power to decentralization, or offering any transparency into their workings, especially when they commit so many crimes. But if JP Morgan did not have a blockchain technology and they were using a centralized database instead, then they couldn't brag about their latest blockchain technology on CNBC interviews. Blockchain as a technology, and we've talked about this before, is only really interesting when you combine it with distributed proof of work. And this is Satoshi's real innovation, which I will link to in this video below, which I've called There's Nothing Special About Blockchain, in which I try to dispel a lot of these misconceptions surrounding Bitcoin and blockchain. So now we turn to what was really the most interesting part of this interview, where Jamie Dimon went on to question Bitcoin's maximum supply cap of 21 million coins. And this is what he said. This is a quote. "How do you know it's going to stop at 21 million? Maybe it's going to get to 21 million, and then Satoshi's picture is going to pop up or come up and laugh at you all." Well, my answer to Jamie Dimon would be, you could actually check the open source code for this if you had half a brain cell. Unfortunately, banking, it's one of the few jobs in the world where an ignorant and arrogant moron can become a billionaire like Jamie Dimon. And he's so smug, he's so arrogant, and he just sounds so stupid saying something like this, because Bitcoin software is completely transparent and open source. And we could check in there and see if as part of Bitcoin Core, there's a JPEG of Satoshi that's going to pop up when the last sats are mined. And I haven't looked myself. I'm not a developer, but anyone who does, please let me know if there's a JPEG of Satoshi hidden somewhere in the code. I think this is very unlikely. It's more just a TV shtick that Jamie Dimon is doing, of course. Now, the larger question is, could Satoshi return and try to raise the maximum supply of Bitcoin above 21 million, or could he somehow do it remotely if he's still alive? Now, yes, theoretically he could. If he were to do it, though, I've already crafted a personal message for him in advance. And that personal message is this: I will never run this revised software on my node, and even if Satoshi himself were to return and command me to do it, which itself is probably not how a cypherpunk like Satoshi would behave or how he would go about doing things, I would not run the software that raised the cap, the maximum supply cap. You wouldn't run it either, no real Bitcoiner would run this revised code, because if you raise the maximum supply of Bitcoin, you're basically diluting your own Bitcoin holdings and ensuring that you will now own a smaller piece of the overall pie. That's committing financial and economic suicide. It runs against everyone's incentives, and that's why if you own Bitcoin, you would never do this. If you were to raise the cap, you'd also be destroying what is perhaps Bitcoin's most well-known and famous and important feature, which is the scarcity, 21 million coins, which everyone knows about, even non-Bitcoiners, and the immutable monetary policy, which was set into effect when Satoshi released the code. It's never been changed. The issuance schedule, very different from Ethereum, which changes its monetary policy every few years. Now, what Jamie Dimon is missing when he makes a snide comment like this is that no one, not even Satoshi, can force you to change the code that you run on your own personal node. And it's that code, it's Bitcoin Core, that monitors the blockchain and rejects any blocks that violate the Bitcoin rules, including the maximum supply. And if you do change the code, those who change the code, they've essentially forked themselves off to a new network and a new asset. So you can certainly do this. You can run your own Bitcoin Core software that's modified to have a 22 million or 25 million coin cap, but you're doing your own thing. There's no exchange that will accept it. There are no miners who will mine on that, and no one's incented to join you. So the metaphor I use is you can play NBA basketball, which is the game that most people play, or you can play donkey basketball, where you sit on a donkey and play basketball. You're welcome to do that, but you're going to be playing with very, very few people. Likewise, if you fork the Bitcoin code and include a higher maximum coin supply, you're going to be playing your own donkey basketball. You're going to be on a new network. You basically will have created a new asset that's no longer Bitcoin. What's the conclusion from all of this? Basically, banksters like Jamie Dimon appear to have zero intellectual curiosity. Bitcoin's been around for a very, very long time. If you're a CEO, if you're in finance, if you're a banker, you think you'd have at least a little bit of intellectual curiosity to see what this thing is that has a market cap in the hundreds and hundreds of billions, that keeps crashing, but then keeps hitting new highs and doesn't seem to be going away. So if you had any intellectual curiosity, you would be investigating this. Of course, if you had any intellectual curiosity, you would not become a bankster when you grow up. It's very hard for Jamie Dimon and Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger to understand something when their livelihoods depend on them not understanding it. And with this, we return to Warren Buffett's famous saying that Bitcoin is rat poison. I love this meme because it shows, we should add JP Morgan down here as one of the rats that Bitcoin is eventually going to put out of business. If you want to learn more about Warren Buffett and his take on Bitcoin and his fiat mentality, I'll also link to this video in the description notes below. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
I made a quote on Friday. Here's a little joke, right? What's the last thing that goes through a bee's brain when it hits your windshield? Have you guys heard that joke? His asshole. Okay, so the bee's asshole goes through his brain. Okay, and I said that the close on Friday was like a bee hitting your windshield, right? Poof, and the poor guy's asshole goes through his brain, right? And that's what the close felt like on Friday. Today, it feels like you're running into a flock of seagulls in your truck, okay? Boom, 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 boom. Fucking seagulls are bouncing off your windshield, okay? And you just don't get what it's like being on a trading floor when you're driving through a flock of seagulls and everyone's trying to fuck you sideways, okay? And your salesman's trying to fuck you even though you're on the same team as him because he's trying to get one of his accounts out of a fucking shit position that, hey, Foss, don't you remember? You sold this fucker the shit position. And I'm like, he's stupid enough to buy it. Now go tell him to fuck himself. And all of a sudden you're like in a war of words and seagulls are hitting your fucking windshield left, right, and center. And guess what? That's what happens when liquidity gets taken out of the system. And we've only done one rate hike.
it's around $190,000, I believe.
Okay, so you live on the $190,000. If you need to sell something, what do? You have to clear it for 45 days, or?
That's right. We've if we have family expenses that, if we have them, that exceed my salary, then we have to sell an asset.
You think that's a fair salary for the job, or?
I do. Yes.
You do. Okay. So today.
I've been thinking a lot about this, like what's going on in the world, what's with all the cultural degradation and such. And my current view, and I've been criticized for this view, but I actually think economics is upstream from most of this. We know that fiat currency is increasing the wealth disparity. That's mechanically understood. And then I think a lot of the political divisiveness flows from that, right? You just have more people dispossessed in the wealth hierarchy. So they're mad. They want to go and vote themselves UBI or whatever benefit it is. And then you have, at the other end of the spectrum, you have people trying to protect their interests, protect their wealth from being redistributed from. I just don't think we could ever have any semblance of political unity without hard money.
I haven't given that a lot of thought, but they're definitely connected, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's exactly what you said. If you rob Peter to pay Paul, you're always going to have Paul's support. And regardless of who's in power, they're intent on taking from those that have, only because there are more that have not. If there were more that had, it would not be the case. But they need to curry the favor of the majority. So they're going to take from the minority to give to the majority just to get their vote, just to stay in power, just to keep this thing going. It's a hard cycle to break.
Yeah, again, without Bitcoin, I don't even know that it's possible. Because so long as taking is an option, whatever group is the most angry is going to try to get in that position of taking.
Yeah, it goes back to kind of Saylor's phrase that he coined a little bit, Bitcoin is hope. And it's just amazing in how many different situations that phrase holds true.
Absolutely.
If you're under the age of 40, you've been so screwed. If we were playing Monopoly, there's one player on the board. He already owns all the property. There's a couple dollars sitting in front of the other 3 seats, and the millennials were asked to come up and play the game. And the bank is adding more money into the board, but they're giving it to the player that already owns all the equity. This is the life of the millennial. What Bitcoin is the 3 millennials, they flip over the whole table and then they beat the one player who started the game over the head with the table. The other person grabs the Monopoly board and hits him in the crotch, and they take all the paper fiat and they shove it in his mouth. That's what Bitcoin is.
I think Bitcoin plays a role in the new multipolar order. I don't see it as a settlement for retail payments necessarily in the future. I think it can coexist in a landscape of competing national currencies, but be the ultimate settlement token between those different zones. I do think, the lockdown changed my view on everything, as you know, and that's when I realized that the system is better off with a neutral asset that can price everything, because without a neutral asset, you have no pricing of anything. Money must be neutral, and there is no neutral money outside of Bitcoin at the moment.
And so we're seeing this revival of freedom. At the same time, the leaders, whatever you want to call them, of the world, the politicians, the leaders are doing almost our own marketing for us, right? They're squeezing everybody. They're taking everybody's freedom away. They're showing us why we need Bitcoin more than we've ever seen. Obviously, in your country sessions with the truckers, but then really it went onto the main stage with Russia getting their bank account seized. And I just don't see any way the world moves forward from the point we're at today. I gave a talk at my conference in May called De-Evolution. So the world's de-evolving. Global trade is falling apart. Globalization is falling apart because we can't trust each other. And it was called de-evolution, re-evolution, and how we'll re-evolve back with a trustless ledger. And so I just don't see any way forward without Bitcoin. And so that's why I'm bullish overall. But specifically this week, like I said, here at this conference, Freedom Fest, seeing this revival of freedom, it doesn't take a majority to prevail, right? It just takes a small minority. And so the minority's here. It's waking up. They see the tools that they have. And I think it's going to come fast.
To me, it just sounds like they're not going to have a choice. Like, it's like, look, get on the Bitcoin train, benefit from it. Yes, you're not going to benefit from a lot of the powers that you had when you had a total monopoly on the money. And you basically use the dollar, you know, and now people have a choice. But that's a very tough pill to swallow for, you know, politicians that have been operating under this monopoly system that we've had for at the end of the, I can't think of you know, another time in American history, right? So is this the type of thing where, you know, they kind of metaphorically, of course, they have to get their finger burnt on the stove. We know there was a Bloomberg article where it's so fascinating. Hong Kong, right, was saying, hey, we're going to be friendly towards this. They had CCP officials in the city putting their stamp of approval. You know, you know, it's very frustrating as an American.
I mean, you know, yes, it's frustrating as an American because even China is opening up to it again. It's incredible, right? And the U.S. is being more authoritarian than China.
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah,
So,
but I mean, it makes sense. They have the, you know, they have the most power. They have the world reserve currency, right? Why wouldn't they want to defend that?
well, but I think that Carter's essay from January 2022, where he wrote a really interesting analysis that stablecoins will help extend the U.S. dollar's reign as reserve currency. I think he's right because the technology is so bad. Now, of course, the Fed, of course, didn't want competitors like Custodia's Abbott or, you know, the BUSD stablecoin, for example. If you just look at how authoritarian the crackdown has been, they're trying to shove the competitors off to the side. And when I say competitors, I'm talking about competitors to Fed now. It's going to be fascinating to see how people respond when Fed now comes online. Really fascinating.
Yeah. Does it worry you that Alex Gladstein, here we go. Opti, let me click it. There we go. Alex Gladstein wrote an amazing book and called Financial Privilege, right? And the reality is that, you know, if you live in a developed country that has a relatively stable fiat currency,
correct,
there isn't a very big incentive for you to seek an alternative. Like if I speak to an Argentine and I'm like, hey, you know, there's this non-government currency, can't be debased, can't be easily confiscated. They're like, where do I sign up? That sounds,
bring it in, shoot it in. Exactly.
This sounds amazing. But you know, Europe or the US, where the bread and circuses is very strong, so to speak, right? And we're very privileged to have all these financial applications, Venmo, Cash App, all that stuff. Does that worry you at all? That people are just like, you know, like Bitcoin's boiling the oceans, it's not necessary.
Yeah, but you know what? It's a process, right? I mean, I got very curious and got myself on the path after the 2008 financial crisis when I got curious why the financial system was so unstable, and the things that I learned in school, you realize aren't exactly how the financial system works. Curious people go on deep dives. And I tweeted out this morning, just overnight last night, I had 434 new LinkedIn requests. LinkedIn is not like Twitter. You don't have all the bots. In most cases, these are verified real people, and much more so traditional finance, lawyers, accountants, regulators, you know, people that I went to law school with, right? That's my network on LinkedIn. Very different than the network on Twitter, which is very different than the network on Nostr. But 434 requests overnight on LinkedIn is huge. It's just a deluge. And that's the second time that I've had a few hundred just overnight. And it's just accelerating in the last week. It's insanity what's happening. Okay, what is that telling me? Why did I share that anecdote? It's just anecdotal, it doesn't prove anything. But what it is it's a qualitative evidence that there's a sea change happening, that there are more people in the TradFi world who are waking up and realizing something's wrong here. And the system that you work in is not stable. I learned that in 2008. I started to get very, very curious, went on a very deep and very broad intellectual journey. I was taking classes on at MOOCs at night. I was doing all kinds of reading and research from the Austrian school on one end of the spectrum to MMT, modern monetary theory, on the other. And it was fun because I didn't learn those theories in school. In fact, actually, I still have my history of economic thought notebook in my office here. And it was one of my favorite classes in school. And I went back and looked. Was there anything about Mises or Rothbard? No. Was there anything about chartalism? No. Those were considered fringe theories. Those were not the mainstream theories that were taught in school. So everybody still has to figure out for themselves. It's their own intellectual journey. But the reason I went on this little diatribe is I think that a lot of mainstream people are waking up. I think that they're understanding that what they've been told isn't necessarily the truth. And curious people tend to go down rabbit holes. And come on in, folks. It's time to get orange pilled. You might not go back out of that hole.
And it's a one-way street. It's a I don't think I've ever met someone that's like,
Me too.
you know, understood about Bitcoin. They're like, hey, this dollar thing, it seems sweet. Let me go back there, you know?
But the leap so many have to make is subjective value theory. And so few in the mainstream are willing to make that leap because they want something objective. But what they don't understand is that objective price, it's turtles all the way down. There's something subjective down at the bottom of that price theory. There's always something subjective. And so, yeah, they just have to make that leap. And for a lot of folks, it's just a leap too far.